Sir, I think we can start.
Should we start or maybe another minute, 1 or 2, maybe?
No problem, as you wish, but I think
Okay.
Sunday they will come like this.
Yeah, just 1 or maybe 2 minutes. Yeah. Should we start now?
Yes, sir, you can go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sadanand. Good afternoon to all of you. I welcome you all. This course is Canada, Society and Politics. And the code is MPSE 009. MPSE 009. Canada, Society and Politics. This is as part of the MEMID, a master's degree in migration and diaspora studies from IGNOU, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Today is the 5th class. We have got one more class to go, which is next weekend. We covered in the first class very quickly a recap. Settler society, how the French came and then the British came. They settled down in places from Ontario to Quebec to Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Islands. Then this westward expansion to Manitoba, Alberta, British Columbia, etc. In Unit 2, we talked about basically there has been number of constitutional acts, but I think you need to remember for the sake of this course, 2 of that, which is I think most important, which I've discussed in great detail. The British North America Act of 1867, and the Constitutional Act of 1982. So basically, I think through those 2 acts, okay, just like in our country in India, we went through a series of constitutional reforms, constitutional measures, because Britishers have been there since 1756, 17 Sipai Mutiny in 1857. But I think in the beginning part of 20th century, as far as India is concerned, when Mahatma Gandhi returned from South Africa and the movement took momentum, then we saw a series of reforms providing little by little, trickle by trickle, some constitutional measures, some reforms, some lollipops here and there. And as part of that, we got 1909 Morley-Minto reforms, 1935 Government of India Act, and eventually India achieved independence in the year 1947. Similarly, in the case of Canada also, again, incidentally, the colonial power at that time was also Great Britain. So they did not give everything on a silver platter and on one go. They provided little by little through different acts. Eventually, it became an independent country. Still, the basic difference, as I have said repeatedly, between Canada and India is a republic. That means the head of state, who is the president of India, he or she is elected through a particular process, like the members of parliament, members of the state legislative assemblies, etc. In the case of Canada, however, the head of state is the governor, is the King of England, which is King Charles at this point of time. Before that, it was Queen Elizabeth II. But the king does not come to Canada every now and then, okay? He is there in London, but he has sent a representative who acts as the nominee, as a proxy, serving as a head of state, sitting in the capital, federal capital in Ottawa. And the title is Governor General. So that is a big difference between a country like India and a country like Canada. Parliamentary federal institutions, like in India, we have got bicameral. There are two houses, upper house and the lower house. In Canada also, there is an upper house and the lower house. The upper house is the Senate and the lower house is the House of Council. They have a federal pattern. That means the central government, the federal government, and the provincial government, they stay side by side. They coexist, okay? And as I've said before, there has been 10 states, 10 provinces rather in Canada, 3 territories, mostly housed and habitated by the Canadian Indians, the native Indians, in the Northwest Territories, in Yukon Territories, in Nunavut, etc. Okay. In Unit 4, we talk about different kinds of federalism, the arrangements, okay, what powers the Governor General has, the Prime Minister has, the Council of Ministers, and also in the individual provinces. The provincial head is called the Premier, Premier of Ontario, Premier of Quebec, Premier of Alberta, British Columbia, etc. Okay. What kind of powers they have? They also have legislatures. So the powers are clearly demarcated, clearly delineated between the two. Public administration in Canada, again, just like any other democratic republics, democratic countries in the world, whether it is India or Australia or Singapore or United States of America, they have got a public administration system. Mostly it is based on meritocracy, based on whoever is number one, who comes on top, okay, purely based on merit, he or she gets the job in federal governments and also in the state government. But there are also certain jobs designated and reserved for the people who are disadvantaged, for the people who are handicapped, for the people who belong to those native Indian, Canadian Indian tribes. Okay, so there are very few jobs which are designated, but otherwise it is mostly through the process of meritocracy. Okay, you basically go from bottom to the top, okay, through merit. Political parties, Unit 6, we talk about pressure groups and policy communities. Political parties, it's a multi-party country, multi-party countries. Most of the countries in the world currently, as you can see, there are multiple political parties. They are competing for power through electoral politics every 5 years. Like in India, we have an election, somebody wins, somebody loses. Okay, but we have many political parties. At the national level, we also have many political parties. At the regional level, as far as Canada is concerned, currently the Liberal Party, which is in power, okay, and it is in conjunction with the New Democratic Party, okay, because Liberal Party does not have an absolute majority on its own. So along with the NDP and some small outfits, together they formed a majority. Mostly, I think Canada has been ruled by the Liberal Party or the Progressive Conservative parties. So liberals and the conservatives, they have dominated the electoral scene for the most part. There has also been example of coalition government, for example, the currently and also the last one. When Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister and he resigned in January, now we have got Mark Carney and the election is due on Monday, which is tomorrow, in fact, in Canada. And so by next weekend, we will know who is coming to power. Is the Liberal Party coming to power? And if so, is Carney going to be the Prime Minister again or somebody else? That is one. Number two, if he falls short of majority, is he again going to form a government along with the support tendered by NDP, National Democratic Party? That also remains to be seen. Okay. Or there is going to be a paradigm shift in terms of the Conservative Party winning. Okay, so that we will know in the next 48 hours. Okay, so stay tuned on that one. So as I said repeatedly, Liberal Party, Progressive Conservative Party, New Democratic Party. In Quebec, the party Quebecs, who have been fighting for a long time for Quebec separatism, for distinctiveness. So they are a very important political force to reckon with as far as Quebec is concerned. There are also some small parties here and there in Alberta, in British Columbia, etc., like the Green Party, etc., and some independents also. But mostly it is Liberal, Conservative, New Democratic Party, and the Party Quebec. So as far as the political party formations are concerned. In chapter number unit 7, we talk about social movements, NGO, social movements in the civil societies, and number of movements in terms of Greenpeace movement, in terms of environmental movements, human rights movements. There has been number of those things, and they're very active in Canada. And the NGOs are also there. There is hundreds and thousands of NGOs. They do a lot of socioeconomic activities catered towards different issues, different sub-issues, and also catering to specific category of people, etc., etc. So NGOs, they do some meaningful role. I think there is also another altruistic side to it. I have spoken to some of my NGO friends in Canada. Of course, they are very giving, very sharing people, and they share with the knowledge and expertise with other people. But they also told me they also get some benefit, tangible benefit in the form of some tax rebate or tax deduction. So, for example, if just like in India, if you pay some money to Prime Minister's Relief Fund or Indian Red Cross, okay, you can show that in the income tax return. So in Canada also, if you float an NGO or you contribute something to the particular NGO for a particular cause, you can take out that part or deduct that part. Okay, so you may get some relief from the tax law. But apart from that, I think Canada has a good track record, has a good reputation of a very robust NGO formation. Unit 8, basically I talk about the Aboriginal group. Aboriginal group is again the endangered groups, mostly the Canadian Native Indians, the people who, the Eskimos, the people who live in igloos, the people mostly living in a very uninhabited areas like the Nunavut areas, Yukon territories, Northwest territories, etc., etc. Very few people live there, but the government is making sure that they also tap into the advantages, into all the federal and state benefits that the society gives. So they do have some rights, and the government recognizes their uniqueness and also their distinctiveness. The civil society, political development, and service delivery. The civil society also plays very important role because they also think they are also important stakeholder in the way Canadian system operates. So they are also one of the important stakeholders. As you know, in a democracy, unless you are a stakeholder, okay, unless you put some stakes into it, you are out of the process. So you need to be an important, viable stakeholder. That's the way you can formulate a policy, you can facilitate a policy, you can be a partner in a policy, okay, which is good for the country, good for provinces, good for a particular cause, okay. And also it goes through a lot of discussions, debate, dialogue, consultation, etc., etc. Okay. Unit 10, we talk about language. Again, in Canada, the two most popular languages are the recognized languages are English and French. That's why I've said if anybody would like to migrate to think of immigration to Canada, or even doing a job in Canada, or even being a student in Canada, okay, I think it helps if you learn the Canadian language, the French language. I think there is a B level or something like that. So I think it will help. Okay. For visiting Canada, I don't think learning French is that a necessity. I have been to Canada many times, and I've managed that with English language. I can't speak French, but I think if you're somebody thinking in terms of permanently migrating to Canada, I think they need to learn French, because you get some extra point, you get some extra bonus points in terms of your immigration cycle. So your processing of the paper will be much quicker and much faster. That's what I meant. Ethnic and racial issues and multiculturalism. As I said, it started out with a uniculturalism with a French model. Then it became bicultural, British and French. And in the last 30, 40 years, let us say from 1970s, 1980s onwards, in the last 40, 50 years, we see Canada becoming a multicultural society. Okay. And Canada is one of the rare countries in the world, as I have said before, which has got a department, a federal department of multiculturalism. That means they are tasked to make policy formulations related to multicultural activities. So any issues, any objectives, any things pertinent to multicultural issues are being handled by the Department of Multiculturalism. Okay. The racial issues that has also been that is not that rampant like on the other side in United States of America, but nevertheless in Canada also in certain parts the racial issue, because you don't see people from African origin, from Jamaica, etc. But still the number is growing, and sometimes we do come across some reports of some racial conflict, racial riots in certain parts, but it is not a very endemic one. It is not a very critical one in that particular levels. Regionalism and provincialism, again, I think although technically and theoretically, all the 10 states, okay, all the way from Newfoundland, New Nova Scotia to Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, all the way to British Columbia, okay, they do basically enjoy all the powers given under the Constitution. But in terms of tax collection, because a lot of the places like British Columbia, they have mines, they have other natural resources. In Alberta also, they feel that they contribute more to the federal kitty. They provide more revenue to the federal government, but instead they do not get that much of financial aid returns to those particular states. So there is basically a divide. There is a divergence between the thinking of some of the Western states, Western provinces like British Columbia and Alberta, vis-a-vis on the eastern side, like Ontario, Quebec, etc., etc. Today, I think we're going to talk about chapter 13, which is Canada in terms of immigrants, refugees, and minorities. Again, as I just said, it was a French cultural kind of thing. More than it became a British, and British are still there. If you go to Ontario, for example, you go to Niagara Falls, you go to Toronto, you go to Ottawa, I think you will see everything British, all the flavor, all the artifacts and everything. Just you go to Montreal and other cities in Quebec, you see a French culture. Immigration, which has taken place in the 60s and 70s, I think mostly it happened up to the end of World War II, because most people decided to migrate initially at the end of World War II. A lot of the Jewish population, because they are persecuted under the Holocaust, okay, we don't like to go into the whole history, they decided to migrate, and Canada had a very liberal policy of migration in those days, in the late 40s and early 50s. So mostly people came from different parts of Europe. And so mostly it was Anglo-Saxon, you can say. But since the 70s onwards, a lot of the people from the other part, like South Asia, like India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, okay, then China, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, then Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, people started moving there. So the interesting thing is, if you go to Toronto, I don't know if you have been there. I've been there many times. You see a little India, a little Trinidad, little Jamaican. So there are stores there. There are certain streets where you can see only those ethnic items. Okay, so they have got their cultural things, they have got movie houses, you can get whatever vegetables you want, the videos, the audio cassettes, all kinds of things that you find. I remember when I went to Canada first time in 1983, I went to a movie house, hardly, I think 75, maybe 100 people were there. It's like a smaller than a multiplex. So I used to watch that, and you can come out of that house, you can taste jalebi, you can taste samosa, you can get a flavor that you are in a place. Then you have got some sari shops, you have got some electronic gadgets in those days. So you just interact and mingle with those people. Similarly, there is a little Chinatown. If you want very fond of Chinese food, you can go to the Danda Street, which is pretty close by, and you can enjoy there. There is little Greece, little Italy. Most of the people, they feel like, in terms of, I would say, ethnic mobilization, you can say, maybe ethnic solidarity, they have created a small island of, you can say, ethnic enclave. Okay, in a way it is good, in a way it may not be good. Why I'm saying both good and bad. Good in the sense you feel that you are a part of let us say this is 100 Indian families are here. Okay, so if there is any emergency or there is anything, I can work on it. But the problem is, once you stay in a particular place for a long time, okay, you develop certain kind of very narrow kind of parochial, certain kind of, how should I say, a ghetto mindset kind of things, which is not good, okay, in the long term, okay. So that's what today, if you go to Toronto, you see Indian people are basically spread all across the greater Toronto, metropolitan Toronto, people going all the way to Hamilton, to Mississauga, to Scarborough, to North York, to many places. Same thing happening in Montreal, same thing happening in Vancouver, etc. So they are not concentrated solely in only one particular part of the city, etc., etc. But that was the case in late 60s, early 70s, even up to the early 1980s. But slowly, I remember when first time I wanted to eat in an Indian restaurant, it was in a street called Gerrard Street in Toronto. Some of you may have heard the name. It was mostly the Indian stores, Indian shops, Indian restaurants, Indian hotels, etc. But today, if you are fond of Indian food, for example, you can find Indian restaurants literally in any part, even including in the Lister Pearson International Airport, right there in Canada also. So things have changed. Okay. So the migration cycle, the immigrations, they have come from different parts, and they have brought about a different kind of multicultural ethos to the Canadian society, to the Canadian polity, etc., etc. The other point that I would like to make, which I believe I said in the last class or the class before, again, that class in a sociological perspective, the Anglo-conformity versus melting pot. Okay, Anglo-conformity means melting pot. Okay, that means you are from France coming to Canada. Okay, you are from Germany, you are from Italy, you are from Spain. Okay, we came to Canada in terms of jobs, in terms of greener pastures, in terms of opportunities, in terms of making lives better. It's perfectly okay, perfectly legitimate. Okay, and you belong to a particular thought. Once we arrive in Canada, okay, let us all sing the Canadian national song, Oh Canada, okay, we all become like Canadianized, okay, and you talk Canadian, walk Canadian, behave Canadian, that kind of things, okay. That is one way of thinking, okay. The other part is, even if I'm in Canada for the last 20, 30, 40 years, okay, and then again, there is another important issue. You see a shift or a divergence in terms of generational kind of thing. The first generation people who came, let us say you went to Canada in 1970. Okay, you worked hard, you tried to make a living, then you brought your wife, or she's already there, then you had got children, they went to school, they grew up, they got married, they mixed with other people, maybe they got married with people from biracial races, other races, okay. So they are thinking they will be much more Canadian than the first generation one. And then the children of the second generation, I mean the third generation, fourth generation, they will be thinking different. Okay. So I know a lot of the parents, particularly with the people like me, who have got an old mindset, okay, they like to teach their kids, okay, you read the Quran, you read the Bible, you read Granth Sahib, okay, you read Gita, you read Upanishads, okay, like to teach all the basic religious philosophies, okay, all the things, okay. But the new generation, for example, let us say who is in a teenager, okay, so he thinks like in a rock and roll kind of things, okay. So there has been a generational shift in the 70s to 80s to the 90s and to this 21st century in 20th. So that has been, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm not attaching any values to it. All I'm saying is there has been a shift in thinking in the mindset. Okay. Similarly, I can give you another example. Now there are more businesses. People are working in federal government, provincial governments. Okay. People are joining politics. Indian, Indo-Canadian immigrants, Indo-Canadian diaspora, they are very active in many political arenas, from the cities, from the councils, from the provincial elections. You find many people from Indian diaspora. You can just check their names. Okay, there are people from Punjab, from Gujarat, from Rajasthan, from different parts. Okay, they've been there, so they are citizens. Okay, and in Canada, as you know, if your child is born in Canada, he or she automatically gets a Canadian citizenship. So that gives you a lot of privileges, in the sense you can apply for any jobs, you get some benefits, you can compete for the election, you can compete for any offices, you can apply for any grants, etc., which a non-Canadian citizen may not be able to get. Okay, so that's why they have got an advantage. So today, for example, if you check in the cabinet of this current prime minister, okay, Mark Carney, they have got cabinet minister from Indo-Canadian community, from diaspora, India-Canadian diaspora. Okay, there are a number of members of parliament also from the Indo-Canadian community, and you can see that. Okay. So 60s onward, this big wave of immigration that came, okay, which started out at the end of World War II, this cycle of migration. Lately, people coming from Caribbean countries, Africa, Latin America, various parts of Southeast Asia, etc., etc. The issue of Aboriginal, it is always there, so let us keep that separate, the 3% of the population, and most of them, they are concentrated in those three areas in the West, namely the Northwest Territories, Yukon Territory, and also the Nunavut Territory. Okay, Department of Multiculturalism. It's a small country of only 40 million people, but it's a country where the minorities are also considered as a distinct category. Okay, 45% people are British origin, and 21% out of that are migrants from Germany, Austria, Italy, Holland, Poland, Baltic states, Ukraine, Scandinavia, etc., etc. So various parts of Europe. Europe itself is also very big. Okay, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, Northern Europe, etc. At one level, you can say it is a splendid diversity. So you can see a splendid diverse set of people from different groups, different ethnic races, etc. But at other levels, you see certain cleavages along the racial lines, along the different ethnic lines. Okay, there is also an element of linguistic chauvinism. For example, the people in Quebec, they refuse to learn English. They are only interested in French language. This is called a linguistic chauvinism. Like, I don't know if that's the right way to describe, like in Tamil Nadu, sometimes it been since the 1960s, there has been a movement, a Dravidian movement, okay, during the Anna movement way back, okay, that Tamil should be the number one, the dominant language. So there is a big cleavages between Tamil with the North Indian, Hindi, etc. In Canada, for example, the Quebec province in particular, the French language is the official, they accept that, and that there is some kind of schism in that one. The native people, Indians and Inuits, they have got special privileges, and as I've said, okay, protection of Aboriginals, it is guaranteed under the Constitution. Sometimes you do come across the reports of racial and ethnic class. The other thing is, I was reading an article the other day. One of the reasons why there has been some cases, sporadic cases of racial this thing, racial riots or racial issues is because when you went there in 60s and 70s, you started from the scratch. You started from zero up, okay? But over the period, maybe good luck, maybe you worked hard, maybe you were smart, maybe you were intelligent, you became you went to the top of the ladder. Okay, you got upward mobility. Okay, and once you have got a lot of money, okay, let us say tomorrow if you become an Ambani or a Adani or a Tata or Birla or Jindal, what you will do? You will invest money in Dubai, you will invest money in different places, okay, or you will buy more properties, you will buy bigger cars, etc. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is this created a kind of jealousy, a kind of envy hypothesis, if I can use that word, among the so-called white community who had the upper hand for a long, long time. But due to this influx of new immigrants, Chinese, Indians, etc., now the underdog has become a top dog, and vice versa. The top dog has become an underdog. Okay. So in some places, in some situations, the whites are not making that much of money, or even if they are making, the non-white population, they are doing well. Okay, their children are going to good school, they're getting good education, they are economically very affluent, etc. So that is creating some kind of societal divide in at least some parts of Canada. Okay, and sometimes we also see some of the issues like the uh, the place of origin that we came from. For example, let us say I settled down in Canada, okay, but I'm from India. I was born in India, I spent my life in India. But if I chose to permanently migrate to Canada, then I think I'm also carrying some of the baggages, some of the policies, etc., from my own country of origin. Okay. So in Canada also, the people who are from Pakistan, so India, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, India, China, I think that kind of Ukraine, Russia, okay, so Ukrainian immigrants versus Russian immigrants, okay. So you see some kind, because Ukrainian immigrants, that loyalty, it's almost like, like a baby which is that newborn child. That is that umbilical cord with the mom, with the mother, okay. So for a lot of new immigrants, the umbilical cord is kind of, I'm using a metaphor, is the motherland, is the country they came from, the country of origin. Okay. And this is the country of adoption for a variety of reasons, for education, for job, for upward mobility, whatever. Okay. So that is creating that kind of schism. Ukrainian immigrants versus Russian immigrants, India and Pakistan. So the politics is not only staying here, it is also being transported over there. Same thing, India, Bangladesh. So if relationship is not in the best of terms in your own country, then you sometimes you carry that heaviness over there also. So that is also happening. Political participation, ethnic mobilization, refugees. This is again another important issue that I need to talk about. Lately, I think in the last 15, 20 years, the different Canadian governments, conservatives, as well as the liberals, they have tried to create certain category and certain quota for the refugees to be admitted legally, lawfully admitted refugees. Okay, people from Sri Lanka. When Sri Lanka went for a long time for this, the ethnic strife they had in Jaffna province, in the Tamil Elam. Okay, I'm talking about 90s, etc., etc. Afghanistan during the Taliban takeover, etc. A lot of the Afghan people then ended up in Canada. Okay, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia. I'm giving you many examples of people from different parts of the world. Because of the war-torn situations, they chose to migrate. And Canada did have for a long time some liberal policy to admit, to recruit the refugees into that particular countries. Okay? So that's all I think and also another interesting things, I think we can talk on and on this particular one. In the media also, if you go to big cities like Vancouver, Alberta, Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, you see the media also to a big extent, to a large extent, they're controlled and managed and sometimes manipulated or monopolized by the different ethnic groups. Okay, and that is happening in electronic media, in print media, in social media. Okay. So I remember when I went to Toronto for the first time in 1983, there are in every Saturday and Sunday, many channels, television channels, they used to provide 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours exclusively the Indian news, Indian news items, Indian serials, etc. Later on, when I went there in the 1980s, etc., it was being shown 24/7, all 7 days a week. So if you want to watch an Indian movie, or you want to also um, enjoy certain Indian literary piece or yoga or tabla or whatever, you can get 24/7. There are multiple channels in all places. Same is the story for other ethnic communities also. So, and it is not only that, let us say India, for example, not only in Hindi, but also the sub-regional ethnic identities. There are some channels or some articles being published in letterheads in Bengali, in Telugu, in Tamil, in Malayalam, in Marathi, in Gujarati, okay? And I'm from the state of Odisha. There is an Odia Society of Canada. I attended some of their functions, okay? The number was not big, maybe 15, 20, 25, 30, like that, okay? But still they had that, okay? And sometimes they had a good strategic coalitional strategy with the other identical or comparable ethnic groups, okay? So that was there. So vernacular medium, electronic medium, print medium, social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, you name it, okay? So there is this huge plethora of these, the over ethnicity or ethnicization of Canadian society. Unit 14 basically talks about liberal internationalism. Like we talk about liberal international order. Okay. The other day I was reading 2 books by a very important scholar of international relations called Amitabh Acharya. He's a professor of international politics at American University in Washington, D.C. And he recently said that the era of Western dominance is over. And the new book that is creating a lot of news these days is the futuristic world order that we are going to watch. According to Amitabh Acharya, which I agree partly and I don't agree partly, he says that Western dominance is over. Now this is the era of the global South. There is a bunch of countries, they are going to take over. My own submission is Western dominance or the American hegemony, if you would like to use that word, has definitely abated, has definitely gone down, but it has not completely wasi way. It is still there, okay? So now there is this arrangement of co-partnership, co-facilitation, co-optation, etc., etc. Issue of culture and identity, national interest. I think national interest is also important very much because the national interest of one country or the other countries are very, very vital because everybody is sticking to the realist theory that I need to be number one. I need to survive. I need to be very powerful. Hard power, soft power, smart power, everything on that particular base. Okay. And the role of US, okay, the role of US multinational, the end of Canada's in liberal institutions. Sometimes when the conservatives were in the upswing in the 80s and 90s, some people say this is the demise of liberal international order. So it is going like in a cycle, like in a wave, up and down, upside, downside, the liberal, conservative, etc., etc. And post 9/11, 2001, the terrorist attacks in World Trade Center, the war in Afghanistan, then the subsequent war in Iraq, it also has its impact on the Canadian society, Canadian politics, etc. Canada also, a lot of people, they call as a middle power, okay? And like in terms of power quotient, you can divide and classify the whole world into 3 categories broadly. Major power, middle power, small power, okay? India used to be like in the middle. So now we are thinking like we are leaning towards the major. Major means US, Russia, France, etc. And we in some areas we are already major in IT, in many other sectors. Okay, like a rising power, as an emerging power, as a competitive power, as a swing power. There are many terms people talk about. Okay, so when we say Canada as a middle power, why we say middle power? What are the attributes of a middle power? Okay, number one, significant influence. Significant. That word is important. Not overwhelming, but significant. Number two, strong economy. That's why Canada is a part of G7 country, a part of group of G20. Number 3, advanced technologies in IT, in drone technologies, robotic technologies, data science. Okay. Number 3, diplomatic skills. The Canadian diplomats, they're very sophisticated, very savvy. Number 5, notable role in global affairs. They take very proactive role in global affairs. Number 6, they also act as mediators in certain situations, in certain problematic cases around the world. Number 7, promote cooperation and conflict resolution. Conflict resolution, resolve the conflict situation that happens in different parts of the world. Okay. Number 8, Canada shapes international events. Okay. Number 9, bridge building, facilitating dialogue and cooperation, dialogue and discussion and debate that Canada talks about. Okay. Diplomatic skills, multilateral arrangements. Okay. Again, G7, G20, NATO, you name it. There are many other organizations like part of NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. Many agreements. Canada is an integral part of that. Geostrategic position, focus on conflict resolution. Okay. Voluntarism, benevolent internationalism. So I think all of these things are part of the middle power. That means you are a very significant power to reckon with, and it cannot be wished away. Okay. In the 80s and 90s, has been particularly in the aftermath of the end of Cold War in post 1990. Then we see this era of globalization, liberalization, privatization, etc., etc. Okay, and Canada is still very much an integral part of this particular process in the post 1990s as part of globalization, liberalization, privatization. Basic limitations of Canada is, some people say this is over dependent on US. Okay, sometimes it works to their advantage, sometimes not. Like today, for example, Donald Trump, the current president, he's trying to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian products, although they are the best of friends in terms of the countries, US and Canada. Okay? So over dependence on a particular country, even if he or she happens to be a friend, sometimes there can be a backlash, and we see that sometimes. Chapter Unit 15 is about human security agenda of Canada. Canada is at the forefront of human security agenda, particularly the end of Cold War, and there has been issues within Canada, which is intra-Canada, and also inter-Canada, Canada vis-a-vis other countries. Okay, underdevelopment, poverty, environment, transnational crimes, pollution, drug trafficking, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, small arms, religious ethnic divide, intrastate conflict. So these are some of the issues that comes within the broad domain of human rights. Okay, there are 5 Canadian policy priorities for advancing human security areas: public safety, protection of civil laws, conflict prevention, governance and accountability. And governance, basically they emphasize and stress on good governance versus the bad governance. Okay, peace support operations, peacekeeping operations. Canada has been very active, very proactive on different United Nations sponsored peacekeeping operations. For example, in Kosovo, East Timor, Sierra Leone, Afghanistan, in many other places, Canadian peacekeeping operations is very much at the top front. Okay, Canadian Corps, it was established in 2004. Again, it was created to contribute more meaningfully to human rights, to democracy, to good governance, democratization, human rights, end of discrimination and exclusion, promotion of human rights, and gender-based violence, to end that, protective steps for national disaster management, rule of law, predominance of law over the people who are doing unlawful things, public sector institutions and capacity buildings to harness that one, conflict prevention, peace building, and security reforms. Okay, there has been some recent initiatives like ICC, International Criminal Court, particularly on issues of former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Kosovo, etc., Balkans. Landmine issue, Canada is at the forefront. Or in Ottawa Convention in 99, okay, and creating this ALT anti-landmine treaties, okay, because countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, etc., they have been victims of that one. Protecting war-affected children, peace building. There is one Canadian organization, maybe some of you have heard it, called CIDA, CIDA, Canadian International Development Agency. I personally know they spend a lot of money in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of issues related to sustainable development, Millennium Development Goals, many other measures. Okay, so CIDA is at the forefront. Number of times they also spend money in organizing conferences in different parts of the world, including India, on issues related to development, etc. Coalition building, NGO, civil society, Canada is at the very front. Okay. As part of the new diplomacy in Canada, so basically to prioritize, to counter terrorism, organized crimes, combating proliferation of WMD. There are some core components of human security as far as Canada is concerned. Freedom from fear, freedom from want. Want means what? Food, water, shelter, healthcare, freedom to live in dignity, just like anybody else, okay, without any discrimination based on race, color, creed, national origins, okay, everybody is equal. Dimensions of human security, economic security, food security, health security, environmental security, personal security, right to life, right to move, right to buy properties, right to move around, okay, community security, okay, wherever you live, okay, there is no threat to your life and liberty. Political security, so you get certain kind of protection. So I think basically they follow all the basic things that you see in most of the democratic societies. I'm not saying everything is perfect, nothing is perfect, okay, in the world, okay, but there is always room for improvement. There is always room for improvisation. So even in the areas of human security, I think Canada could get a very high marks in terms of implementing, in terms of operationalizing, in terms of propagating or advancing the different aspects of human rights. But at the same time, I think they need to do more. They need more collaborations. They need more proactive states. I think over a period of time, we'll see Canada coming into the mainstream of the global society and then trying to be an active partner on many of the things. Because today's world is interdependent. You cannot talk in a very self-isolated manner, okay? Like cyber terrorism. If something happens in Colombia or something happens way back in Fiji or Kiribati, it affects you. Okay? So it is not like you are staying in a one particular place, okay, and you are not affected. You are affected. The whole world is interconnected, is interwedded. What happens in one part of the world does have some seismic impact on the other, like an earthquake. If it takes place in Nepal or Turkey or Afghanistan, we feel the tremors right here in Delhi. Okay. So I think same thing in terms of the issues like drug trafficking, human trafficking, cyber terrorism, cross-border terrorism, okay, international terrorism, development issues, poverty, hunger, thirst, food security, health security. It is all there. Okay. Maybe it is more in some places, like in Africa and some places. Maybe it is less in some places. But the point I'm trying to make it is there, okay? So I think it is incumbent on the advanced countries, the middle powers or the major power, to reach out to the less fortunate ones, okay? So maybe if we can lift up, everybody can live happily thereafter, okay? I think that's all I have to say today. I'm willing to take maybe one or two questions, maybe some comments, okay? Domingo, any question?
No, sir. Don't have any question.
But can I ask you, because you are from Mozambique, we don't know a lot about your country. If I have to ask you one or two issues on human rights, what are the issues which are very important in your country? In terms about human rights. Sorry,
yeah.
in terms of, no, not human rights, in terms of human security.
Okay, yeah, we have some problems right now because our country don't have many investment in the cameras, in the roads.
How
And
about the food security? How about health security, food security?
yeah, I'm going there. So this kind of problem is going for security also. So about the food security, we receive many foods from South Africa because South Africa has many of the farmers.
Right.
And yeah, in the South, like Austral Africa, all those countries, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Malawi, all of us, we are receiving food from them.
Right.
Yeah, we are receiving food from them. So in terms of the security, like police, immigration, we don't have like one law of all those countries.
Right.
Each country is working independently. And yeah, and this is not good because we have many situation of trafficking, human trafficking and drugs also.
Right.
Because Mozambique is in the coast, and many of the drugs coming from Brazil, yeah, they are dropping from our coast in the ocean, and they go from Mozambique to South Africa also. Yeah, this is the how many issues about the
Domingo,
security.
just I'm curious, what is the language you speak? You speak Swahili or you speak Portuguese or what?
Yeah, in Mozambique we have many languages, but the official language is Portuguese.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have 3 regions. We have North region, we have 3 language. In Cent, we have 3 language.
Okay.
Yeah, in South we have three or 4 language also.
Wonderful.
They
Wonderful.
call Bantu language. Yeah, but official language for the studies in the schools, we are using Portuguese because of Portugal.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but yeah, they are teaching us.
Right. Right.
Yeah, they are teaching us also English, but very little, not too much. It's like to know some gaps of Portuguese, of language of English. But if you want to know more about English, you need to start from yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Nice
Yes.
narratives. Okay. Thank you, Domingo. Gurpreet,
Thank
do you have any relatives? I'm just curious. In Canada, any relatives? Gurpreet, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any relatives studying in
Sir.
Canada?
Yes, sir. In Toronto, my family, my brothers, and my mother is there, sir.
Where? Which part? British Columbia, Vancouver?
Sir, no, sir. They are in Toronto, Ontario.
Which place? Toronto?
Toronto is that area is, sir, probably now in Cleveland.
Okay, Cleveland is in USA.
No, sir. Now in Georgetown.
Okay.
Towards London City.
Okay, London. I know that. Okay. And how long they have been there? How long they have been there?
Sir, about 30 years.
Okay. Have you been to
Sir,
Canada?
yes, sir. I visited Canada along with the family 2-3 times, sir.
Great, wonderful. Okay.
Sir, one clarification, sir.
Yes,
Clarification, sir.
Yes.
Sir, when we were discussing the points about the Canada middle value to the major power from the middle power,
Right.
I think probably the vast geographical area coupled with the drinking water reservoirs and the forest cover area are also the strengthening point of that country.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of natural resources. I mean, huge natural resources in terms of timber, in terms of forest, in terms of lake, fresh water, in terms of mineral resources. I think Canada is very lucky. I mean, the nature has endowed Canada with so many things. I mean, and so few people. I mean, look at the area and look at the number of people. So I think Canada, hopefully, is in the right track in the next 20-30 years. I think it will be, my prediction is it will be a big major power. Okay.
True, sir. Very true. Sir, the probability of Quebec to be an independent province?
I don't think so, Gurpreet. I don't think so. Okay. Because I think there has been this understanding, this accommodation, okay, I think they are getting already some
Sir.
tangible benefits. So I think that part in the 70s and 80s, that part, I think that rhetoric is over. So I think now there has been more accommodation kind of thing in terms of the policies, etc. So I think both the sides have been sensitive to each other's needs. So I think there is a much bigger understanding of that one. So I do not see Quebec seceding from the Canadian Union unless something really, really drastic happens. And I don't see that happening, at least in the next foreseeable future. I don't see that. Okay.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome. Thank you very much. Okay. So enjoy your rest of the afternoon and see you next weekend.